faithfully delivering value and interpreting great books worldwide. Hello, this is Sally's Book Club. Today we're exploring the book The Unwinding, An Inner History of the New America, winner of the 2013 National Book Award for Nonfiction. The subtitle is An Inner History of the New America. Author George Packer is a veteran journalist for renowned American magazines like The New Yorker and The Atlantic, known for feature writing. And after the U.S. launched the Iraq War in 2003, Packer spent years reporting from Iraq. Yet what Packer witnessed in Iraq was America not only plunging the country into prolonged civil war, but completely failing to deliver promised reconstruction. He felt America was no longer a superpower. Its political system and institutions were broken. What went wrong? When did America's decline begin? With these questions, Packer returned home and began seeking answers through the lives of ordinary Americans. The Unwinding serves as a kaleidoscope of modern America, tracking three ordinary Americans born in the 1960s and two cities, spanning 1978 to 2012. These 35 years of turbulent lives unfold through three protagonists, interwoven with mini biographies of 10 prominent figures like talk show queen Oprah Winfrey and Colin Powell, Secretary of State under George W. Bush. Packer defines this era as the unwinding, a new historical period where shared values of American institutions disintegrated, marking the gradual shattering of the American dream. Our exploration begins with these three ordinary Americans' life stories. There are two reasons for this. First, these three Americans, born in the 1960s, each reveal fundamental forces behind America's unwinding since the late 1970s. Deindustrialization, policy controlled by elites, and corporate dominance crushing local economies. From adulthood, they experienced this unstoppable downward spiral. Second, these three character portraits spanning 35 years best demonstrate George Packer's nonfiction mastery. His decades of political reporting, combined with Jeff Connaughton's sharp insider revelations, expose how political and business elites collude to seize power and resources. Today, we meet our first protagonist, Tammy Thomas, a Black female worker from America's Rust Belt. Her story reveals the primary cause of America's decline, deindustrialization that began in the late 1970s. From the 1920s to the 1970s, Youngstown was a thriving steel city. Several major steel mills supported tens of thousands of residents, and new immigrants could find jobs in the mills to settle down and live comfortably. After World War II, workers' welfare improved with decent wages and pensions. Local workers no longer sought jobs with higher technical requirements or better working conditions. In September 1977, the largest local steel pipe manufacturing plant suddenly closed. Overnight, 5,000 people lost their jobs. Since then, Youngstown seemed cursed, with its economy collapsing and jobs continuously cut. Between 1975 and 1985, Youngstown lost 50,000 jobs as steel mills across Ohio gradually relocated to states with better shipping access or even to the Mexican border. In the remaining factories, more and more jobs were replaced by mechanization. Our first protagonist, Tammy, is a Black woman raised by her grandmother. She got pregnant at 15, and by her 20s, she was a single mother of 3 children. Tammy graduated from high school. When she entered society, Youngstown's traditional steel industry was gone. Fortunately, with her high school diploma, she became an assembly line worker at a subcontracting factory for General Electric. In Tammy's childhood memories, Youngstown had shopping malls, schools, playgrounds, and churches. After the steel mills closed, these vanished. The park where she used to pick peaches as a child is now overgrown with weeds and turned into a dump. Former middle-class neighborhoods deteriorated into slums, with half the houses and 2/3 of the residents gone. Locals say that after the mass unemployment, the city began to decay, as if cancer was slowly killing it. Social problems in Youngstown proliferated. Let's see what life becomes in the rapidly sinking Rust Belt. First is drugs. Youngstown was never a clean place. Tammy's mother was an addict. But after the mass unemployment, drug trafficking became rampant among desperate residents, draining families' last savings. Different neighborhoods in Youngstown were controlled by various drug-dealing gangs. Several of Tammy's brothers got involved, with some injured and others arrested. Next are fires. In the 20 years after the steel mill closures, Youngstown's population plummeted from 140,000 to 95,000. Neglected, vacant houses kept catching fire, with at least 2 fires daily throughout the 1980s. Even more outrageous, city demolition officials hired criminals to torch houses scheduled for demolition to save half the costs. The most terrifying was violent crime. Throughout the 80s and 90s, Youngstown consistently ranked among America's top 10 cities for crime rates. Tammy picked up her high school graduation photo, pointing out to reporters, her classmate was stabbed to death. That one was hit by stray gunfire. Half her classmates died in random tragedies, with law enforcement rarely making arrests. In 1995, 29-year-old Tammy finally met someone who could share her hardships. Her boyfriend proposed. She didn't accept immediately, but joyfully discussed it with friends. But in that brief moment, she returned to find him shot dead in a hotel. No one knew why. Oh. You might wonder why Tammy didn't leave this hellish existence. Of course she considered it. Everyone in Youngstown did. After the mills closed, white residents quickly left. But black residents had little social support, making relocation difficult. So they stayed in Youngstown. Her assembly line job supported her 3 children. Leaving meant welfare dependence. Avoiding government aid was Tammy's last shred of dignity. When discussing Rust Belt hardships, some blame residents' lack of ambition for their plight. So let's examine Tammy's case. Does hard work guarantee escape? Upward mobility primarily requires good jobs. But in old industrial zones like Youngstown, economic development is deeply uneven. Post-mill closures, Tammy found few jobs beyond assembly lines. Even those were scarce, letting factories exploit loopholes to abuse workers. Factories routinely fired workers after probation to avoid providing health insurance and pensions. After signing a 1993 contract with IBEW Local 717, workers' conditions worsened further, never received full wages or benefits. Management treated employees hired after 1993 differently, enforcing stricter rules that prohibited Tammy from chatting on the assembly line. Supervisors stood behind workers monitoring them, and contracts encouraged 12-hour shifts. For workers like Tammy with families or health issues, this system essentially forced veterans into early retirement. Then, they hired new employees under the 1993 contracts. Tammy went from operating 1 machine to 2, with a 40% pay cut. Years of overwork left her with chronic arm injuries. Among her peers, Tammy was relatively fortunate after trying. After multiple factories, Tammy finally got regular status with health insurance at one plant. She dreamed retirement might come with more years of effort. Workers also tried protecting rights through unions. But she soon discovered the union had long capitulated to management. As more factories moved to the Mexican border, finding jobs became increasingly difficult. Unions lost bargaining power and became increasingly ineffective. Tammy expected downsizing, but never total closure. Like steelworkers decades earlier, her nightmare arrived. In 2006, the company announced it would close or sell 21 of its 29 U.S. plants, eliminating 20,000 hourly jobs. The plant wouldn't close, but 2/3 of workers would be cut. Remaining staff faced 40% pay cuts. Tammy's wage dropped from $25 to $13.50 hourly. Management encouraged buyouts to reduce 3,000 workers to 650. Accepting meant forfeiting most pensions. Tammy took the buyout, losing over half her pension for a $140,000 payout. After taxes on the buyout, she kept $82,000, about 2.5 years' wages. Born 10 or 20 years earlier, workers like Tammy could have retired comfortably from GE with stable pensions. But after deindustrialization, Tammy's luck ran out, Youngstown kept declining. Good factories left, and capable people fled. Public funding dried up, crippling local governments. Infrastructure decayed, and public schools deteriorated. The local community entered a vicious cycle of continuous decline. This is the unwinding that Packer aims to reveal in this book. The institutions that once guaranteed a decent life for Americans, such as economic growth, respectable jobs promised by the American dream, unions protecting workers' rights, and local community police departments, began to unravel in the late 1970s. If you were unfortunate enough to live in the Rust Belt, like Tammy, as a new immigrant or a minority, this wave of pain came very early and very fast. After hearing Tammy's story, you might ask, why hasn't new legislation been enacted to protect the interests of ordinary Americans in this era of decline? Next, we delve into the story of the second character, which will show us how democratic legislation operates in America. The second protagonist, Jeff Connaughton, had the highest starting point among the three individuals born in the 1960s we're introducing today. He was born into a middle-class, dual-income family and has a prestigious education from elite universities. Connaughton worked for the current U.S. President Joe Biden. As an early political aide, he served as an assistant to the White House counsel during the Clinton administration, later becoming a professional lobbyist in Washington. Connaughton. Later, he broke with the Washington political elite, giving us a chance to see whom America's political elites truly serve. Why are the voices of ordinary people unheard? With no political connections in his family, Connaughton entered politics purely by chance after hearing Biden's passionate speech in college. He quickly became a devoted fan, following diligently and serving faithfully in Biden's early campaigns. One of these is me breaking. For 15 years, Connaughton raised more funds for Biden than anyone else in Washington, making him a key aide and competent campaign team member. After navigating Washington circles, Connaughton changed careers at age 37, joining a lobbying firm in 1997. In Washington, D.C., there exists a vast interest group consisting of policymakers and large corporations that lobby to advance or block legislation for their own gain. Lobbyists shuttle between them, connecting officials and businesses, using money to keep this interest group running. The late 1990s were the golden age for Washington lobbyists, with major corporations paying them $1.25 in 1997. Over the next 12 years, that amount tripled, and this is just direct payments to lobbyists. Additional public relations expenses were billed separately. Washington lobbyists often earn over $1 million annually. You might ask, lobbyists just talk. How do they rake in so much cash? First, they have high-level government connections. Many are former senators, representatives, or presidential staff who can advocate for corporate donors. From 1998 to 2004, 42% of former House members and half of former senators became lobbyists, targeting their ex-colleagues. Thousands of congressional aides followed suit, as did hundreds of Connaughton's Clinton-era colleagues. Second, clients assume officials' opinions reflect White House policy, adjusting corporate strategies accordingly. In 2000, Connaughton's boss, Jack Quinn, launched a new lobbying firm. Everyone knew Quinn was Al Gore's ally, and Gore was likely to win the presidency that fall. Quinn spent 5 years in Clinton's inner circle, emerging unscathed from every crisis. Clients believed his insights reflected White House positions on major issues. Third, lobbying firms built a systematic influence industry, forcing client dependence while leaving opponents, often harmed citizens, powerless. The influence industry shapes media narratives by targeting different audiences through various channels. applying pressure to lawmakers in specific districts. As early as the 1990s, Connaughton's firm specialized in fabricating grassroots support, recruiting locals to simulate spontaneous backing for bills. Traditional media was equally manipulated, with lobbyists debating on TV and publishing op-eds to sway public opinion. Washington has more lobbyists than politicians. The entire city feeds off corporate money. Even Connaughton, who couldn't access Biden directly, soon earned over $500,000 in 2000. But the good times ended when Lehman Brothers collapsed in September 2008, with Wall Street firms teetering. The $2 trillion crash unfolded faster than anyone imagined. The subprime crisis exposed a deeper problem in America: the collapse of legal systems and financial regulations. How could these major banks be technically insolvent with only insiders knowing? The only explanation is bank executives committing fraud with zero regulatory oversight. The crisis showed Connaughton how rules stabilizing U.S. banking for half a century had been secretly undermined. In 1933, Congress passed the Glass-Steagall Act to maintain barriers between commercial and investment banking. This act was repealed by Congress in 1999 through bipartisan votes. Clinton signed the uptick rule, requiring investors to wait for stock price rises before short selling. This rule was abolished by the SEC in 2007, just before the financial crisis. Connaughton rebuilt his wealth only to be crushed by the financial tsunami days later. The subprime crisis became Connaughton's awakening moment. He shockingly discovered America's government had been taken over by financial elites essentially governing for oligarchs. To his and many voters' dismay, newly inaugurated President Obama appointed people from the same old financial circles. Meaning these financiers wrecked ordinary lives, wiping out lifetimes of retirement savings. Yet, Obama hired them back to clean up. Predictably, no one was held accountable for the crisis. Connaughton joined the House of Representatives under his former boss, Kaufman. They aimed to uncover the crisis roots and make bankers pay. With Biden, their former boss, as VP, America's second in command, they thought connections would ease their investigation. Congressman Kaufman drafted legislation demanding special funds to investigate perpetrators of subprime fraud, including Wall Street executives who hid truth from lawmakers and public pre-crisis. But investigating financial fraud proved daunting. Pricey accountants and lawyers erased evidence early, drowning investigators in paperwork. Justice departments predictably backed down. Delays stretched over a year as the White House downplayed the crisis. Newly elected President Obama prioritized his signature Obamacare initiative over cleaning up the previous administration's mess. Besides, the politically inexperienced Obama didn't want to alienate financial elites. Kaufman only served 2 Senate years and no longer needed to worry about career prospects. Post-crisis, Connaughton's Wall Street fury burned. He and Kaufman risked political capital to pursue fraud investigations and push bills for bank regulation and high-frequency trading oversight. All these efforts either failed spectacularly or faded into obscurity. After the 2008 crisis, the 2010 flash crash vaporized nearly $1 trillion from U.S. markets. Though these failures proved Connaughton's regulatory proposals correct, big banks had become too big to fail machines with entrenched interests. When Republicans regained the House during Obama's first term, the historic chance to hold bankers accountable vanished. Connaughton's faith in American institutions, Democrats, and free markets shattered. Before leaving D.C., he delivered a career-detonating speech. In New York, he exposed financial fraud, judicial incompetence, and Wall Street evasion before 300 people. Connaughton knew this speech destroyed 3 decades of D.C. connections. His utter disillusionment with America drove this nuclear break. Now we meet our third protagonist, Dean Price, an entrepreneur in the rural South. This reveals another facet of America's unwinding. Corporate exploitation crushing local economies, leaving communities lifeless. Dean was white, but didn't benefit from America's full privilege system. not part of the northeastern WASP elite, but of Scots-Irish descent. This group comprised Southern laborers and farmers, often disparaged as rednecks, hillbillies, or the slur white trash. Before the 1970s, they worked as farmers and laborers, with relatively secure lives. Dean's hometown, Rockingham County, North Carolina, had three traditional industries, with tobacco being the largest. The tobacco industry once allowed Dean's grandparents to establish families and achieve middle-class status. In the early 1990s, health concerns led to congressional lawsuits against tobacco companies, rapidly shrinking the market. In 1998, tobacco giants were ordered to pay states over $200 billion in settlements. Afterwards, tobacco farming never recovered. The other two major industries, textiles and furniture manufacturing, were also devastated by late 20th century globalization. Textile factories began closing in the 90s. Within a decade, a town of 70,000 lost over 10,000 textile jobs. Furniture manufacturing faced crushing competition from low-cost Chinese producers after 2000. Unable to pivot to premium markets, local furniture companies bankrupted, unlike youth fleeing the decaying South. Unlike others, Dean returned to rural South after 1 year in the city, believing land could revive Southern glory. His first venture was a highway rest stop on Route 220, convenience store, diner, and gas station. Dean attracted truckers with low gas prices while profiting from the higher margin diner and store. And he planned to feature locally grown foods to benefit farmers. But he quickly learned truckers preferred junk food's taste and convenience. Worse, local produce cost more than shipped and processed food.
Having seen big chains use volume pricing in cities, Dean replicated the model in rural South.
But soon, corporate gas stations invaded his small southern town. Dean slashed prices further, barely breaking even. Later, he discovered ExxonMobil supplied chains at 3 to 4 cents less per gallon than he paid. A conglomerate with 250 chain gas stations pushed independent owner Dean into a corner. Two events in 2005 dealt a fatal blow to Dean's truck stop business, pushing him toward a new entrepreneurial path. First, in September 2005, Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans, halting commercial traffic on Route 220.
With school buses unable to get gas, public schools in the Carolinas closed, pushing Dean's gas station to near bankruptcy.
It was then Dean realized how heavily the U.S. economy relied on Middle Eastern oil. Around that time, he encountered the concept of peak oil theory. As a finite resource, regional oil production peaks. The U.S. in the 1970s, other nations around 2005. At this tipping point, energy shortages could paralyze transportation, halt society, and trigger riots. Dean realized this mirrored post-Katrina New Orleans. He believed America needed new energy solutions beyond distant Middle Eastern oil. The other catalyst. Within a year, in a poor agricultural county of 90,000, 3 Walmart supercenters opened, swiftly crushing local grocers, clothing stores, pharmacies, and eateries while offering cheaper gas. Dean's gas station was endangered. Walmart's slightly lower prices lured cash-strapped locals. But this was the trap. Small savings actually undermined the local economy. Investigations revealed chains like Walmart kept only 10 cents of every dollar locally. The bulk flowed to capitalists in Wall Street or Silicon Valley. Walmart did hire local staff, but paid minimum wage, just $16,000 annually. Giants like Walmart used predatory pricing to drive out small operators. The problem? These businesses were community builders, baseball coaches, council members, respected leaders. Their departure hollowed out local communities. Big corporations devastated small communities economically, socially, and politically, shattering America's foundational community structures. Disillusioned with America, Dean trusted neither government nor media, seeking all information online himself. Then he discovered a concept perfectly aligning with his dreams: reviving local agriculture while solving America's energy crisis. Biodiesel. Biodiesel is renewable fuel made from plant or animal oils through esterification. Sources abound: rapeseed, soybeans, animal fats, even recycled cooking oil. Dean planned 20% biodiesel blends from locally pressed rapeseed oil, cheaper than pure diesel and truck compatible. He partnered with two locals, hired 25 farmers, launched a factory, and funneled biodiesel directly to his gas station. For Dean, this was near perfection. Local farming, production, and sales, farm to pump with no middlemen or transport costs. Timing was impeccable. As U.S. fuel prices soared, his blend cost 10 cents less per liter than regular diesel. Dean's pioneering biodiesel truck stop drew media and political acclaim, becoming an overnight sensation. His project delivered cleaner energy while keeping 90 cents of every dollar in the local economy. But prosperity faded when the 2007 financial crisis hit. Dean's burger joint suffered first. McDonald's dollar cheaper meals drew budget-conscious locals. Soon, his shop closed, another small business crushed by chains. When 2008 oil prices crashed below $4 per gallon, biodiesel lost its edge. The project bled money, desperate for government aid. In 2010, Dean's biodiesel company finally secured a $750,000 federal stimulus grant. 88 ND. Unfortunately, U.S. bureaucratic procedures proved extremely cumbersome. Dean waited 9 months just to receive half the grant. Simultaneously, Dean faced massive resistance. Fossil fuel companies and conservative groups argued biodiesel legislation would raise electricity costs and eliminate coal jobs. Media exposure drew local officials' scrutiny, with government agencies pursuing back taxes and fines. Courts ruled the truck stop bankrupt. Dean's gas station was sold to a corporate chain and reverted to regular diesel. Biodiesel lost its largest local market. Crushed by global market volatility and corporate power, the small entrepreneur finally collapsed.
Dean's rural experiment wasn't understood by elites who believed class mobility meant becoming programmers or financial engineers. Dean cried out, "How many jobs does Wall Street or Silicon Valley actually offer?"
What about the vast farming communities? America's elite could no longer empathize with workers and farmers, offering them no solutions. Such were the stories of these three Americans born in the 1960s. Packer's Unwinding encompasses both economic and societal collapse. Local institutions, small banks, shops, unions, factories, churches, schools, once provided communal cohesion but now lay weakened. Americans became isolated individuals, stripped of community, their fundamental safety net. Through diverse narratives, Packer's book chronicles America's institutional disintegration. He identifies root causes: deindustrialization, financial deregulation, corporate exploitation of local economies. But does Packer prescribe solutions for America's social crisis? No. Of course, solutions aren't the journalist's role. Their duty is documenting social truths. Yet his protagonist's paths hint at possible crisis responses emerging among Americans. In the epilogue, Tammy used her buyout money to graduate college, becoming a community organizer, helping clear vacant homes and restore neighborhoods, fighting to reclaim Youngstown from violence. And after leaving Washington, politician Connaughton published books exposing Wall Street misconduct, advocating stronger financial regulation, and warning of recurring crises. Entrepreneur Dean persisted through failures, still exploring alternative energy solutions. He experimented with converting used cooking oil from public schools into biodiesel, cutting costs while powering school buses. All three protagonists, and others profiled, focused on rebuilding local economies and communities across America. This grassroots self-reliance partly explains Trump's 2016 electoral success with anti-immigration policies and China confrontation rhetoric. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton's elite-focused campaign failed to connect with working-class voters. And originally published in 2012 during Obama's presidency, when America projected global dominance, Packer's defied convention. His book delivered a wake-up call. America's domestic crises were festering while workers and farmers struggled. Had you read this in 2013, Trump's 2016 victory might not have shocked you. When elite establishment figures like Clinton failed working class Americans, Trump's populism became an inevitable backlash. Packer foresaw how disillusioned Americans, bereft of institutional trust, would turn to fundamentalism, cults, and conspiracy theories while resenting elites. Many already harbored hostility toward China. These insights were validated by Trump's anti-immigrant, isolationist 2016 victory. Such sentiments intensified throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Remarkably, these insights predate current events by 9 years. Parker's observations on contemporary American society remain sharp and precise. All right, that concludes our introduction to The Unwinding. Reading notes are below the audio. We'll see you next time.